The wind was cold that night, sharp like broken glass. Lucas sat inside his small outpost, fixing an old drone that hadn't flown in years. Outside, the world was silent except for the wind and the low hum of the distant power grid. Then he heard a soft knock on the door, not loud, just weak, like it had no strength. He paused, tools in hand, listening. Another knock came, softer this time, almost like a whisper. He stood up slowly, unsure, his hand resting near the old blaster on the wall. Nobody knocked out here, not unless they were lost, or desperate, or dangerous. Lucas opened the door cautiously, and what he saw made him freeze. A girl stood there, not human thin, alien. Shaking from head to toe, she had no shoes, no coat, and her skin, a soft lavender blue, was scraped and bruised. Her eyes looked up at him, wide and scared. She tried to speak, but only a soft breath came out before she collapsed to her knees. Lucas stepped forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing, like a shadow made of bone and fear. He carried her inside without thinking, closing the door behind them. He placed her gently on the small cot near the heater and wrapped a blanket around her. She opened her eyes again, just a little, and tried to speak. "I can be useful," she whispered, her voice dry and broken. "I'll do anything. Just don't throw me out." Lucas frowned, kneeling beside her. "I'm not throwing anyone out," he said softly. "You need food and rest." She shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "I'll bear your offspring." "If you want," she sobbed. "Just let me stay." Lucas didn't know what to say. This girl, this poor creature, was not trying to hurt him. She was trying to survive. He brought her a bowl of soup, warm and simple. She stared at it like it was treasure, then looked at him, unsure if she was allowed to eat. "Go on," he said gently. "It's for you." She ate slowly, carefully, like someone afraid it might be taken away. Lucas sat nearby, watching her. Her body was shaking less now, but her eyes still held that deep fear. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused, then whispered, "V." V didn't look older than 20, but her eyes were ancient with pain. Lucas could guess where she had come from, one of the ships that traded in flesh. Slavers didn't care about age or species. They only cared about price. And girls like V, they were sold too young and too often. He didn't ask her to tell her story. Not yet. She had said enough just by standing at his door. Later that night, while she slept, Lucas sat near the heater. He looked at her face, so small, so tired, and wondered how many others had walked past her. How many doors had stayed closed while she begged. She had offered herself like a trade. Like her life had no meaning unless it served someone else. And yet, when he gave her warmth and food, she looked like she didn't know what kindness even was. Something inside Lucas stirred. Not pity, no. Something deeper. Something like rage at the world that made her this way. And something like a promise. He didn't know what the days ahead would bring. But he knew this much: he would not be the man who turned her away. When morning came, V woke slowly, her eyes adjusting to the soft light. Lucas handed her clean clothes, not new, but warm and dry. She held them like they were a gift from a god. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak. "You don't owe me anything," he replied. "Just rest, eat, and stay safe." Her lips trembled as she tried to understand his words. Kindness was a language she hadn't spoken in a long time. And outside, the cold wind kept blowing. But inside that little outpost, something new had begun. Not just survival, but maybe hope. V sat on the floor near the heater, arms wrapped around her knees. She had been awake for hours, but didn't speak unless spoken to. Lucas moved around quietly, making breakfast from dry rations and a bit of dried fruit. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it was just uncertain. He didn't want to scare her, but he didn't want to leave her alone either. After a while, he placed a steaming cup in front of her. "Tea," he said softly. "It's not fancy, but it's warm." She looked at the cup, then slowly picked it up with both hands. Holding it close, the heat made her fingers shake. Not from fear, but from memory. Lucas sat across from her, leaning on a metal crate he used as a chair. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said, "but I want to understand." V blinked at him, her eyes still cautious, but not as wild as before. He continued, "How did you get here? You said your name is V, right?" She nodded slowly, then hesitated. "I think." "That's my name," she whispered. "At least, that's what I remember them calling me." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Them." "The buyers," she replied. "And the handlers before them?" Her voice cracked, like her words were rusty from not being used. "I don't remember my real name," she said, eyes distant. "Maybe I had one before, when I was still with my people." Lucas leaned forward. "Where are they now?" V lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening around the cup. "Gone," she said softly. "Taken, sold, or worse. I was small when it happened, maybe 5 cycles old." Lucas felt something twist in his chest. She had spent most of her life as property traded between ships and stations like cargo, and now she couldn't even remember her true name. "You can choose a new name if you want," he said gently. "Or we can keep calling you V." She looked up at him, surprised. "You mean I get to choose?" "Of course," Lucas nodded. "You're not anyone's property here." She held on to the cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "V is okay, I think," she said slowly. "It's the only name I've known. But this time, it'll be mine." Lucas smiled for the first time that morning. "Then V it is," he said. "Welcome to your new life, V." She didn't smile back, not fully, but something in her eyes softened. After breakfast, Lucas gave her a datapad. "Wiped clean. It's old, but it still works," he said. "I thought you might want to learn, draw, or just." Escape for a while, she took it in her hands, looking confused at first, then surprised. "You're giving this to me?" "It's yours," he replied. "Do whatever you want with it." She nodded, holding it close to her chest, like the blanket and the clothes. It was hers. And that word hers was beginning to mean something. Hours passed, and Lucas stepped out to repair the solar panels on the roof. When he came back, he found V sitting on the cot, eyes fixed on the datapad screen. She had drawn something shaky lines at first, but slowly shaping into a child's face. "Who's that?" he asked gently, sitting beside her. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe someone I used to know. Maybe someone I wanted to be." Lucas didn't press further. Some memories were too heavy to carry all at once. She would let them out when she was ready, that night. Lucas prepared extra food and left a portion for V. She was still getting used to eating full meals, still slow and careful as they sat under the heater's soft hum. She spoke again. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Lucas looked at her seriously. "Because you needed help," he replied, "and because I could." She shook her head. "Most people just look away. They pretend I'm not there." "Well," he said, "I saw you. And now I can't unsee you." Her eyes glistened. Not with fear this time, but something else. Maybe trust. Just a small seed of it, finally starting to grow. Before going to sleep, she asked one more question. "If I hadn't offered my body, would you still have let me in?" Lucas turned to her, meeting her gaze. "I didn't let you in because of what you offered," he said firmly. "I let you in because you were cold, hungry, and alone." She nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheek. "Then this place," she said softly. "It's the first place I've ever felt safe." Lucas stood quietly, turned off the light, and whispered, "Then stay as long as you need." V, and that night, for the first time in years, she slept without fear. The colony was small, tight, and full of whispers. People noticed everything, especially when something different appeared. And V was different. She was alien, young, and now seen often around Lucas's shelter. She wore his spare clothes, walked beside him in the trading post, and didn't flinch anymore. The change was obvious, and it didn't go unnoticed. The whispers started slowly. "Did you see the girl with Lucas?" One man said. "He took in a stray. Looks like a slave girl," another added. But then someone else said something different, something heavier. "I heard she's carrying his child." That line spread like fire through dry grass. One sentence became a storm, and soon everyone in the colony had an opinion. V didn't understand at first. She just felt eyes on her, watching, judging, assuming. People stared at her stomach, her hands, her every move. When she tried to speak to a vendor, he looked at her strangely. When she walked past a group of women, they whispered behind their hands. She returned to the shelter. "Confused and quiet, Lucas," she said. "Why do they look at me like I've done something wrong?" Lucas sighed, placing a toolbox down on the table. He had already heard the rumors himself. "They think you're pregnant," he said carefully. V's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "But I'm not. I know," Lucas said gently. "But someone started a rumor, and people believe what they want to believe." She stood in silence, staring at the floor. Then slowly, she whispered, "Maybe. Let them believe it." Lucas looked at her sharply. "Why would you say that?" Her voice was low, shaking. "Because if they think I carry your child, they'll leave me alone." He didn't answer right away. She continued, "No one touches a female with a strong male's child, not unless they want trouble." Lucas shook his head. "You shouldn't have to lie to feel safe." V met his eyes, her voice trembling. "But safety is a lie most of the time. I'll take the one they offer." Lucas didn't like it, but he saw the fear behind her calm face. She wasn't trying to trick anyone. She was trying to survive the only way she knew. So he nodded. Slowly, "I won't say anything to confirm or deny," he said, "but I'll stand beside you if they push." Days passed, and the stares softened. The rumors gave V something she hadn't had before: space. No one asked her where she came from. No one tried to touch her or sell her off. Even the patrol guards gave her a little nod of respect when they passed. It felt strange, like the lie was building walls around her. They weren't real walls, but they kept the world out. One evening, while walking back from the trading post, a woman approached them. She had hard eyes and strong hands, a former soldier turned farm worker. "You taking care of her?" The woman asked Lucas directly. "I am," he replied, keeping his voice calm. "Good," the woman nodded. Then turned to V. "Eat well, child, and rest when you need to." V blinked, surprised, and nodded. It was the first time someone had treated her gently in public. That night, V sat by the heater, staring at the flames. Lucas was repairing a scanner, but he glanced up at her often. "Do you regret it?" he asked suddenly. She turned to him. "Regret what?" "Letting them believe something that isn't true." She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't regret it," she said. "But I hate that it works," Lucas put down his tools. "You don't need to pretend forever." V looked at him. "I know," she whispered. "But for now, the lie protects me." She placed a hand over her stomach and gave a sad smile. "It's funny," she said. "They think there's life growing inside me, but really, I'm the one being reborn." Lucas sat beside her, silent. She leaned her head on his shoulder, not in fear, but in peace, and in that moment, he realized something. The colony might believe a lie, but what he felt for her was real, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe in herself too. The sky above the colony turned gray that morning. Not from weather, but from the slow descent of a patrol ship. It came down heavy, humming with power, the colony's ground shaking under its landing gear. Dust blew across the small buildings, and workers paused to watch. Everyone knew what that ship meant: trouble. Lucas saw it from his shelter window and felt his stomach twist. V stood nearby, holding a basket of old parts. She froze when she saw the ship, her eyes wide, body stiff. She didn't need to ask, she already knew. She dropped the basket and backed away from the window. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Lucas stepped toward her, but she was already trembling. "They found me," she said, her voice cracking. "They always find me." Lucas put his hands gently on her shoulders. "You're not alone this time," he said. But V shook her head. "You don't understand. They don't care if I'm safe or if someone wants me. To them, I'm just missing property." The patrol officer stepped out of the ship wearing a black and gray uniform. His eyes were sharp, his boots loud on the metal floor of the outpost gate. He was alone, but he didn't need backup. The badge on his shoulder gave him power, and that power was enough to scare an entire colony. Lucas stood near the gate when the officer arrived. "Lucas Dre," the officer said, holding up a holoslip. "I'm Captain Rain. Colony Enforcement, Sector 7. Lucas nodded, keeping his face calm. "What's the issue, Captain?" Captain Rain glanced at his pad. "We're searching for a missing individual escaped from an off-world transport 3 weeks ago. Species?" Lucas asked, already knowing the answer. "Female Zalari, light skin tone, small frame." "Possible trauma response." Rain looked straight at him. "You know anything about that?" Lucas took a breath. "She's under my protection," he said clearly. "She?" The officer raised an eyebrow. "Her name is V," Lucas continued. "She's with me. And she's carrying my child." The words echoed between them, heavy and sharp. The officer blinked, clearly surprised. "You're saying she's your mate?" "Yes," Lucas said without flinching. "She's mine, and the colony knows it." Captain Rain paused, considering. "I'll need to verify that." He said, stepping forward, "She's inside, I assume." Lucas blocked his path slightly. "She's not well, needs rest," he said. "She can answer your questions, but I won't let her be dragged out again." Rain looked annoyed, but nodded. "I won't force her," he said, "but I have the right to speak with her." Lucas called V out quietly. She stepped out slowly, face pale but calm. When she saw the officer, her hands shook again, but she stood beside Lucas, not behind him. "Name?" The officer asked. "V." She replied quietly. "Were you aboard the slave ship Corin Wave?" She nodded. "Did you escape?" She nodded again. "Are you carrying this man's child?" V hesitated, then looked up at Lucas. He nodded, gently, and she turned back to the officer. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I am." The officer looked at her, searching for cracks in her answer, but V didn't look away, not this time. Rain slowly lowered his pad. "You understand what this means, right?" he asked. "If I leave this colony without you, the record marks you as claimed." "I understand," V said. "Then I'll file the report," Rain said coldly. "Congratulations." He added with a sharp glance at Lucas. "Fatherhood isn't easy." He turned and walked away. The ship's engines hummed, rising slowly into the sky. And just like that, he was gone. V didn't speak. Not right away. She leaned into Lucas's side, her body finally relaxing. Her legs gave out, and he caught her before she fell. He helped her sit on the edge of the cot, holding her hand. "You did good," he said softly. "I lied," she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. Lucas nodded. "You did. But you also stood your ground. And that lie saved you today." She looked at him with pain. "I don't want to live behind lies forever." "You won't," Lucas promised. "Just long enough to make truth safe again." Outside, the colony returned to normal. But inside, the shelter something had changed. V wasn't just hiding anymore. She had claimed her place. And for now, no one could take it from her. The days after the officer left were quieter. No more knocks, no more ships, no more eyes watching from a distance. The colony had accepted the lie that V belonged to Lucas, and that she carried his child, and in that lie, there was safety. But V's body carried a different truth. She tried to stay strong, tried to walk around the shelter, fix small things, help Lucas with tools. But her hands shook too often, and sometimes her legs gave out. She would smile through the pain, hiding the truth beneath gentle words. But Lucas noticed everything, every time she winced while standing, every time her skin turned pale, every time she sat down quickly and acted like she wasn't dizzy. He asked her gently, "Are you all right?" And she always answered, "I'm fine," until one morning she wasn't. It started with a sharp gasp from the bathroom. Lucas rushed in to find her on the floor, curled tightly, sweating and barely conscious. He picked her up without a word, her skin burning hot and ice cold at the same time. She couldn't speak, only groaned softly as her head rolled against his chest. He didn't wait. He ran straight to the colony infirmary. No permission, no questions. Just slammed the door open and shouted, "Help her." The medic on duty was a middle-aged woman named Kara. She had sharp eyes and hands that didn't waste time. She took one look at V and moved fast, getting fluids, scanning her vitals, checking her pulse. Lucas stood back, helpless for the first time in weeks. He hated that feeling. "She's severely dehydrated," Kara muttered, "malnourished, and her body's shutting down." Lucas stepped closer. She's supposed to be pregnant." Kara looked at him sharply. "She's not," the medic said flatly. "There's no fetus, no hormonal signs, nothing." Lucas felt the room tilt, not from shock, but from guilt. He had helped keep the lie alive, but now the truth was forcing its way through, and V was paying the price. She told people she was. Lucas admitted quietly. Kara glanced at him. "Why?" "To stay safe," he answered. It was the only way she knew. The medic softened slightly. "Well, lying's not the worst crime I've seen in this room," she said. "But letting this go on without medical care, that's dangerous." "I didn't know," Lucas said, voice cracking. "I thought she was okay." Kara waved him off. "She'll live. If she rests and eats like she's supposed to. She's scared to ask for anything." Lucas muttered, mostly to himself. Kara's voice was blunt but kind. "Then maybe it's time you stopped waiting for her to ask." V woke later that day, blinking at the bright light above her bed. Lucas sat beside her, one hand holding hers gently. When she saw him, her eyes filled with fear again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to lie. I just didn't want to be thrown away." Lucas squeezed her hand. "V, listen to me," he said softly. "You don't have to lie to stay with me." Tears slid down her cheeks. "But I'm not useful," she said. "I'm not pregnant. I'm weak. I've got nothing to offer." Lucas shook his head slowly. "You've given me something no one else ever has trust. You looked at me like I was safe, even when you were afraid. And you never took more than you needed." He leaned closer, his voice low. "You don't have to give your body, or lies, or anything else, you being alive." "That's enough," V cried, not from pain this time, but from relief. For the first time in her life, she wasn't being judged for what she could give. She was just accepted. Over the next few days, she stayed in the infirmary. Kara watched over her like a hawk, making sure she ate, drank, and slept. Lucas brought small things to cheer her drawings. Warm socks, a tiny drone that hovered and blinked like a firefly. V laughed quietly the first time it danced around her bed. That laugh was worth more to Lucas than any lie they'd ever told. And when she was finally strong enough to walk again, She didn't walk behind him like a shadow. She walked beside him, head high. She wasn't pregnant. But something new was growing inside her now. Strength. The sun rose slowly over the metal roofs of the colony. Soft light touched the dusty ground as machines hummed to life and traders opened their stalls. V stepped out of the infirmary that morning, her feet bare but steady, her skin still pale, her frame still thin. But her eyes, those had changed. They no longer looked for the nearest escape. They didn't search the shadows for danger. Now they searched the horizon. Like she was looking forward, not back, Lucas stood outside waiting for her, hands in his pockets. He smiled when he saw her walking toward him. You didn't have to. Get up so early, he said. She smiled faintly. I didn't want to sleep the day away. Not anymore. She had spent weeks healing. Not just her body, but something deeper. Kara said her vitals were stable, her strength returning slowly. But Lucas saw something even more important. She had started to live, not just survive. Back at the shelter, V looked around with new eyes. This place, she said quietly. It smells like oil and dust, but it feels like safety. Lucas chuckled. That's the best compliment this dump has ever gotten. She looked at the walls, the patched floor, the humming heater. I want to make it better. She said suddenly, I want to help. Lucas nodded. Then, help, not because you owe me, but because you want to. And so she did. She started organizing parts, fixing broken tools. She learned how to weld without burning her fingers. And every time Lucas showed her something new, she listened like it was important. At night, they sat by the heater, talking about small things, like what stars she missed seeing from her home world and what earth foods Lucas missed eating when he was far from home. They laughed more, sometimes so much that she had to hold her side. She wasn't the scared girl who had offered her body for shelter anymore. She was V, just V, one evening, while fixing a cracked drone wing, she looked at Lucas and asked, Do you ever regret it? Regret what? He replied without looking up, letting me in. Lucas put the tool down and looked at her seriously. Not for a second. He said, You changed everything here, including me. V's fingers trembled slightly, but not from fear. I keep thinking, she whispered. What if you hadn't opened the door that night? Then I'd still be fixing this stupid drone alone, Lucas said, grinning. And I'd be missing the best part of my day. She blushed softly and went back to working, but her heart beat a little faster. Something unspoken was growing between them, not forced, not traded, not begged for, just real. Later that night, she stood at the door, looking up at the stars. Lucas stepped beside her, sipping from a cup. They say the sky looks the same no matter where you are, he said. V nodded. Maybe, but it feels warmer from here. She looked at him, the cold wind brushing her hair back. I could leave, she said softly. Now that I'm healthy again, I could find a new place, a new life. Lucas's face didn't change, but his heart sank. He nodded. You could. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, But I don't want to. He turned to her, eyes searching her face. Why? He asked gently. V took a slow breath. Because this place is more than walls. More than food or warmth. It's the first place I ever felt chosen. She looked at him, eyes shining. And you? You didn't need me. You never asked for anything, but you let me stay. You saw me when no one else did. Lucas reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You stayed too, he said softly. You didn't run when things got quiet. You didn't leave when the lies broke down. You stayed. Because your heart chose to, she nodded, tears in her eyes but smiling through them. Yes, it did. They stood there in silence, the wind wrapping around them like a soft blanket. No promises, no debts, no lies, just to people who had found something rare in the cold, uncaring galaxy, a place to belong, and maybe, just maybe, love. The wind was strong that morning, sweeping across the colony like a warning. But inside Lucas's shelter, all was calm. V sat near the window, wrapping wires together for a small repair bot. Her hands were steady now, her touch quick and skilled. She no longer flinched at sudden sounds, no longer stared at doors with fear. She belonged here. And the world was beginning to believe it too. Outside, traders waved to her when she passed. A few children even ran to her with broken toys, hoping she'd fix them like Lucas used to. She didn't charge them. She only smiled and said, "Give me time," and they always waited. Word had spread about her strength, not the kind that comes from muscle, but the kind that comes from surviving and standing and staying. No one dared to call her weak anymore. One day, while walking through the market, she overheard a conversation. Two guards were talking about a girl who had escaped a slaver ship. They didn't know she was standing right behind them. She got lucky. One said, landed with a man who actually gave a damn. Maybe, the other replied, or maybe she made her own luck. V didn't speak, didn't correct them. She simply walked on. But her chest felt warm, because for the first time, her story wasn't about pity. It was about strength. Back at the shelter, Lucas had a surprise waiting. He had repaired the long-broken transmitter on the roof. It could now reach across systems if you want to try and contact someone. Maybe from your past, he said. It's ready. V stared at the blinking lights, silent. Then she turned away slowly. My future's here now, she whispered. If anyone from my past cared, they'd have come for me by now. Lucas didn't push. He simply nodded and stood beside her. Not as a rescuer, not as a protector. Just as a man who stood with her by choice. That night, the stars were brighter than usual. The colony lights dimmed due to a power adjustment. V and Lucas stood on the roof, wrapped in old jackets. Sharing silence, she looked at him and smiled. Do you remember what I said that first night? Lucas nodded. You said, I'll bear your offspring, just don't throw me out. V laughed softly, almost like a different person. I meant it back then. I really thought that was all I could offer. Lucas turned to her, serious, but gentle. And now? She looked at him, eyes calm. Now I offer my heart. Not as a deal, not as a trade, just freely. He reached for her hand and took it. His grip was firm, warm, and real. You don't ever have to beg again. V, he said. Not for food, not for love, not for a place to belong. And she didn't, because the next morning, everything changed. The patrol ship returned, but this time, it wasn't searching. Captain Rain stepped out. Holding a datapad and a package, Lucas met him at the gate, V standing by his side, not behind. Rain nodded. This came from Central Authority, a formal record correction. He handed the pad to V. It had her name, listed as free citizen. Her identity had been updated. Her tracker tag erased from the Galactic Slave Database. She was no longer hunted, no longer property, no longer a ghost. There's also this, Rain added, handing her a small packet. It was a citizenship band. Encoded with her ID and full protection rights, she took it in shaking hands, blinking down at it. This makes it real, she whispered. Rain gave a rare smile. You made it real long before this. And with that, he turned and left. Lucas wrapped his arms around her from behind as they watched the ship lift off. You're free now, he said quietly. I was free the day you opened your door, she replied. Later that evening, they added her name to the shelter's entry panel. V-Dre, it read, just under Lucas's. Not because he owned her, but because she chose to stay. Because she wanted to belong not through fear, not through lies, but through love. And so, the girl who once begged in the cold, the girl who offered her body just for shelter, now stood Tall, strong, and loved. No longer a girl who had to beg, but a woman who had found her home.